Before an airline can operate international services, government must first negotiate a treaty-level agreement with other countries. Now, these treaties are known as Bilateral Air Services Agreements. This system has its basis under the Chicago Convention and associated multilateral treaties. The Chicago Convention was signed in December 1944 and has governed international air services since then. Now, here in Nigeria, there appears to be a negative balance as most local airlines can't reciprocate most of the operating bases. How the nation's aviation industry can turn this tide around is our subject on this edition. Welcome to Aviation This Week on Channels Television. I am BC Adebayo.
Air transportation is a hugely important part of the economy for business travel, tourism, domestic and international trade. According to statistics, Nigeria loses over 300 billion naira annually to international airlines that have been given what many describe as more than enough flight rights into Nigeria at the detriment of Nigerian carriers, which are left with just 3% of the international market share. Most countries of the world are able to fly into each other's territory based on an agreement, commonly referred to as Bilateral Air Service Agreement, BASA. This agreement, which two nations usually sign, is to allow international commercial air transport services between their territories. Nigeria has about 8 local airlines and 26 foreign airlines flying into the country. The inability of Nigerian airlines to fly most of the routes has led to an imbalance in the over 80 Bilateral Air Services Agreement or BASA between Nigeria and most countries.
No airline has hiked fares so far, although the dollar has devalued, as we know, 70%. No airline has hiked fares because we are feeling for Nigeria. And it's a free market. There's no cap. So there's no law that restricts us from doing that or not to do that. It's obvious that we as Nigerians need to sit down and start to look inwards. You cannot continue to feed other people's children at the expense of your own children in-house. Your children are suffering from kwashiorkor. You are giving food to somebody else that is being subsidized by another government food.
At the moment, British Airways operates 14 frequencies to Lagos and Abuja. Ethiopia Airways operates multiple frequencies to Enugu, Lagos, Abuja and Kano. Other carriers including Qatar and South African Airways recently added other frequencies for the airline operators of Nigeria. Opening up the nation's airways leaves more than meets the eye.
The BASAs must be reviewed to put it in a place where it is mutually benefiting. People have come to this country to come and discuss BASA agreements, and they come with aviation technocrats with 20, 30 years experience on the other side of the table. And on the Nigerian side, not one aviator is sitting down there. There are instances where people have tried to sign the sixth freedom right. There's nobody that has the sixth freedom. There's no even free freedom between the two closest allies in the world. The British government and the American government do not even have a free freedom right. We should look at aviation and try and harness our potentials in aviation. This is not the time to play big brother and say, oh, come and do 5 landings at the expense of your local airlines. We have airlines here today coming into our country doing 5 landings, intercity hops. Those same airlines do not allow commercial operation in their own country. I'm not talking about commercial operation above 19 passengers do not happen in their own country. So I'm not talking about you as a foreigner to come in. Their own country, they don't even allow, because they are protecting the market to grow their own potentials. Nigeria needs to start to look at aviation as something that will contribute to our basket. It is there, it is shameful, it's painful.
The Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority is quick to say that some of our agreements with certain nations gives room for multiple frequencies.
As it is today, if you look at the buses we have, a lot of Nigerian carriers have not been taking advantage of those buses. So what we are trying to do is to encourage Nigerian carriers to take advantage of what is available now. And buses are not what you can call permanent documents. They change. They're very dynamic. And every now and then we review them, and Nigerian carriers are invited to take part in utilizing those BASA frequencies that we have. You know, some countries we have multiple designation. Some countries we have only single designation. In some cases, we even have multiple entry points.
Nigeria has negotiated over 80 bilateral air services agreements and associated arrangements. Bilateral air services agreements or arrangements contain provisions on traffic rights, that is, the routes airlines can fly, including cities that can be served within, between, and beyond the bilateral partners. Capacity. This is the number of flights that can be operated or passengers that can be carried between the bilateral partners. Designation, ownership and control. The number of airlines the bilateral partners can nominate to operate services and the ownership criteria airlines must meet to be designated under the bilateral agreement. This clause sometimes includes foreign ownership restrictions. Tariffs. As some agreements require airlines to submit ticket prices to aeronautical authorities for approval, and many other clauses addressing competition policy, safety, and security. As it stands, international aviation is regulated by a complex web of over 3,000 interlocking bilateral air services agreements. In recent years, groups of countries have also come together to negotiate air services agreements. These are known as plurilateral agreements. However, the majority of international air services are still traded bilaterally.